Great, I can see people coming in to the session. Wonderful. We'll wait for those numbers just to come in for just a minute, and then I'll start with our welcoming remarks, housekeeping details, etc. Okay, why don't we go ahead and kick it off? Hello and welcome to the webinar, VR Case Studies, Emerging Technologies in Counselor Education and Other Helping Professions. Thank you all for being here. My name is Elizabeth Roby. I am an editor of the database Mindscape Commons, which is part of Coherent Digital. We are an online academic publishing group and really happy to host this webinar today, and really honored to have Drs. Wilkinson, Walsh, and Dawson on this call to have a conversation around emerging technologies in the helping professions. So as people are joining the call, I have just some quick housekeeping details before I introduce the panel and we get started. First, we will be recording this webinar and posting it to our Coherent Digital website. We will email you with the link of that recording in a few days. Also, we encourage you to use the chat box. We'll be keeping an eye on it and monitoring it throughout the hour. So if you have a question or a comment while someone is talking, please post it and we'll try to weave it right into the conversation. In fact, I think Dr. Walsh, you'd like to ask the attendees what they'd like to get out of this webinar?
Sure. And our experience is, especially with something like this, there are going to be folks who really know a whole lot about VR and AR and 360 video and want really specific information. And there's going to be other folks that are a little bit more new to the content. And so we would like to tailor this conversation, and we would like it very much to be a conversation to you and your needs. So if you've got something really specific that you're interested in or you're into, please throw it into the chat. My background and experience is in sort of the learning and kind of the neuroscience of learning side, how VR and AR and 360 video fit into that. So I can add to that. Dr. Dawson has got tremendous experience with regard to use of the technology itself and the development of technology and customizing that technology. And is very willing to share his expertise with folks. And Dr. Wilkinson, of course, and I'll let him introduce it. He's done some amazing research with regard to using and utilizing these technologies in the classroom. So anything that you're hoping to get out of that, please do throw into the chat and we'll be happy to tailor this to you.
Yeah, please do. Please use that chat function. We will be monitoring it. And thank you so much, Dr. Walsh. So before I go ahead and introduce our wonderful panelists, I hope you'll allow me to take a minute to talk about Mindscape Commons, which is an online database of immersive video content for teaching and training in the helping professions. Early in my research on the use of immersive technologies, I actually came across an article in the CACREP journal, Teaching and Supervision and Counseling, by Dr. Wilkinson and his colleague. Dr. Wilkinson, was it Kathleen Vizile?
That's correct,
Yeah. It was in the CACREP journal, Teaching and Supervision and Counseling, and the article is titled Counseling Students' Experiences Viewing Virtual Reality Case Studies. I found it really intriguing. And so Dr. Wilkinson at the time had created a few of these 360-degree video case studies to be viewed immersively in a headset. And he published his research, which he'll talk a little bit about today. But from there, we connected, and together we've worked to expand the number of virtual case studies into a library of video content, which is in Mindscape Commons. So very quickly before I introduce our panelists, I just wanted to show a quick slide on Mindscape Commons. Do you see it up here? Yes, great, thank you. Okay, so just really quickly, Mindscape Commons is the first online database of immersive and interactive video content in mental health. This is our website right here. It's free to register just with an email. I encourage anybody on the call, if they're interested, to register. I will actually share this link in a follow-up email after the webinar. With the registration, you have access to a growing directory of research projects around emerging technologies and mental health, as well as links to open access 360 video content, links to Oculus content. We've provided indexing and summaries around all the content in the directory so you can really easily find what you need for teaching. And again, this is just all open access. We really hope to grow this community of people interested in this area. So we would love for you to submit information on any projects you're working on with emerging technologies and mental health. We have an entry form link on our website to fill information out on your project. I'll send you that link in our follow-up. We can create a page that details your project and research and links back out to your own website to drive traffic there. Again, we're just trying to build community around this area. With this free registration, you're also able to preview some of our membership content, which includes the VR cases we'll be talking about. We also have some interesting interactive simulations that showcase evidence-based relationship skill building techniques. We have assessment questions embedded into that video. Other 360 video, it's all about 3 to 15 minutes. It includes teaching materials and transcripts. And again, the majority of content in Mindscape can simply be viewed on a laptop. So if you're not particularly, if you're new to VR or other emerging technologies, it can just be viewed on a laptop, on a mobile phone with a cardboard device or a head-mounted device such as an Oculus. So anyway, if you're interested in accessing all of Mindscape, we can set up a free institutional trial. But really, for right now, I just really encourage you to just register and take a look around and send us feedback. So that is it with that slide. Okay, so now can you, am I slide sharing any longer?
Nope, I think you're in good shape. We see you.
You see me. Do you see anything coming up on my screen?
Not any longer.
Great. It's just us. Okay. Okay. I just want to introduce our wonderful panelists. Dr. Tyler Wilkinson is an associate professor and coordinator of the PhD program in counselor education and supervision at Mercer University. He's based in Atlanta. He also maintains a private practice. Dr. Wilkinson has presented at numerous counseling conferences and has been published in various peer-reviewed counseling journals. His research interests include the implementation of technology in counseling and counselor ed, humanistic approaches to counseling and counselor ed, student cognitive development, ethics, and couples counseling. So welcome, Dr. Wilkinson. Dr. Michael Walsh is a clinical associate professor at the University of South Carolina Rehabilitation Counseling Program. In addition to maintaining a private practice, Dr. Walsh specializes in, as he mentioned before, learning communities and adult learning, and has delivered presentations on best practices in teaching. Dr. Walsh has served 2 terms as president of the Association for Humanistic Counseling, 2 terms on ACA's Ethics Committee, and is currently a member of ACA's Governing Council as the current parliamentarian. And finally, last but not least, Dr. Robert David Dawson, who goes by David, is also a clinical associate professor at the University of South Carolina's Rehabilitation Counseling Program. He is coordinator of the VR lab, the virtual reality lab within the School of Medicine, and co-director of South Carolina's Center for Assistive Technology in Education Research. He and his colleague, Dr. Walsh, have presented on ways to use virtual and augmented reality in counselor education, which they'll be doing here today. So thank you all so much for being here, for offering your time and talents. And I think at this point right now, Dr. Walsh, if you'd like to go ahead and kick it off.
Sure. And thanks, everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that wonderful introduction and for having us here today. We really want to have this be a conversation with you all about what you're interested in, what are your needs, what do you wonder about with regard to virtual reality. I can say that when I was first exposed to it, Dr. Dawson has a tremendous amount of experience, many years in working and in using VR. And I remember he and I talking about it, and he kept saying to me, "You got to try it. You got to try it. You got to try it." Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds good, I would say. And one day, I was walking by his office. You sit down. You got to try it. And as soon as I sat down, put on that headset, we were actually looking at brain models, and he knows what my interests are, so he knew how to suck me in. And as soon as I was in that world, I thought, wow, how amazing this would be for say an addiction student to be able to watch the onboarding of a substance and visualize how that happens. What kind of depth of understanding could we reach with these kind of immersive experiences? And he and I were like kids in a candy store. I think it was probably 2-3 hours went by, and then we realized we were both late for everything that we were supposed to do. And we realized the sort of the potential, or I realized the potential. He already knew about it. So I think that sort of wonder of how can we use these technologies to facilitate learning has really spurs me on. And so what we hope to do today is maybe ignite your curiosity a little bit. For those of you who know a lot about virtual technologies, maybe there's something really specific that we can point to. Dr. Wilkinson has, as I said, done some incredible research with the use of these technologies, and he's got some data on that he's going to share with us. Dr. Dawson's got a tremendous amount of experience, and Dr. Dawson will also, and he and I both will volunteer to consult with anybody on this call in terms of the development of your particular project. So we're happy to share what we know. As folks, and I think I can speak for Dr. Wilkinson too, as folks who are interested in humanistic approaches to learning. Boy, there's not too many things more humanistic than helping somebody to deepen the meaning that they can make of something and deepen their experiences. And sometimes I think people look at technology and think, well, that's not humanistic. But really, when it comes to making meaning of things and deepening experiences, nothing could be more humanistic than that. So with that said, what I'd like to do is just kind of give you a brief 2 seconds. I mean, this isn't going to be real long. But I wanted to share with you the specific things that we're going to be talking about today. So, what's 360 video? What does that mean? And we're hoping to share that with you. So let me bring this up real quick. Can folks see my PowerPoint?
I can see it.
Excellent. Now, this is part of an ACA presentation that we did, but I just want to share the first few slides with you, and then we can kind of move forward. I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint in general, but sometimes a visual helps. We interact with the world through sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. When we're operating educationally through, hey, read an article and let's talk about this, there's somewhat of an immersive component to it, right? People are reading, people have to make some meaning of that. They have to understand that. But the real magic happens, I think, when we have conversations with others and we're able to connect with others about the meaning we make and about the meaning that they make. Learning community stands as a way to sort of bring all that together. What we thought in terms of as we developed immersive technologies is, could we deepen the experience such that those interactions, those conversations have so much more meat on them to be able to share? And so really fundamentally, and we'll go into the neuroscience of all this in a second, there is fast learning and slow learning, and I'm not going to go into this in depth, but fast learning is sort of what you learn first, right? So if you think about riding a bike, fast learning was, I've got to take my feet, off the ground, and I've got to figure out the motion and how that works. And that happens in certain areas of our brain. And it tends to happen very quickly and in a very front-loaded way in parts of our brain. And then you see that on the left, called the M1 area. And that's great. That's where initial learning starts. And if you think about, teaching people to counsel, that's how it works. They have to mimic what a good counselor looks like, sounds like. They have to watch it. And in doing so, they're able then to sort of get up on the bike, right? Take their first few strides. But if you're anything like me learning on a bike, you fell a lot of the time. And one day your brain had time to cook. Your brain had time to sort of make sense of that and start to integrate some of those things with the more of the posterior aspects of the brain. And you see that on the second slide. That's slow learning. That's when we start making meaning of things. That's when we start filing things so that we can use them really efficiently. And that's when skills really tend to grow. The amount of immersive experience we have can advance that slow learning process. Slow learning is called slow learning because it happens a little bit more slowly. The more immersive the experience, the more we can move from fast to slow learning. And really what we want counselors to experience as they learn is slow learning. We want them to be able to intentionally be able to call upon those skills. So really, when we talk about virtual reality and immersive reality, VR 360, we're looking to deepen those experiences so that we can facilitate this fast to slow learning process. And I'm happy to share this article with you. It's by Diana Cohen, 2011. Really an interesting article. But what are we talking about today? This is a brief look at my brain that was imaged very recently. No, just kidding with you. So here is 360 video, and this is an example of a 360 camera. I don't know if you can see this, but it's got a lens on one side, it's got a lens on the other. The software then stitches those images together, and so that when you are viewing a 360 video, and typically you would do this either with you've heard about cardboard. That's a cardboard device that you place your phone into, and your phone actually creates stereoscopic images either side, and the viewer allows you then to puts this in front of your eyes and allows you to experience an immersive content. So the one I think of off the top of my head is the lion experience. You know, you're standing kind of near a tree and in a lion enclosure, and you look around you and there's a cub that's wandering around, and oh, he's right there. And you can physically turn around in the environment, and the software stitches those images together and provides you. It's less interactive, but certainly much more interactive than, say, looking at a 2D video where you have the edges of the screen. It feels like you're there. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is an overlay of virtual technologies into sort of current experiences. For those of you who are old like me and remember the movie Minority Report, there was a lot of augmented reality in that particular movie. He was moving through the environment and it would say, "Hi, Mitch, are you interested in McDonald's today? You look hungry," right? And by the way, there's a McDonald's over here. And by the way, there's a library over here. And if you look at the image we have on our screen, you can see that it's overlaying some virtual content with the actual picture content. Augmented reality is considered by many to be the future of advertising, for example. You can go, if you get interested in this, download the Google Wines That Talk. There's an app that you can download and go to the supermarket, find 19 Crimes wine, and open that app and hold your phone up to that bottle, and the bottle will talk to you. The person will come alive and will begin to speak. Imagine if you could do that with a textbook. I mean, think about the copyright stuff aside, right? If I could take a textbook, and I apologize for my puppy thought this was a great textbook and tasty, so I apologize for the look of this one. Imagine if we could open this textbook and then have a graphic come up, or have an infographic, or if we're looking into the assessment cycles of the subscales of the waste. Imagine if we could see those and page through those. So augmented reality has lots and lots of applications to enrich 2D content or enrich video content. And lastly, and this is where I'll close, we talk about virtual reality, and these are headset-based experiences. I think the one you're seeing here is the Rift. I think that's a Rift S. And that is a highly immersive content. You've got controllers. This particular unit is tethered to a computer. It gives you a really rich immersive experience. There's a newer versions of this technology, the Quest and the Quest 2, which are wireless. They don't require tethering. But as such, because they don't have a big old computer with lots of memory and a graphics card backing them up, They tend to be a little bit lighter in terms of content, although that's improving as well. So I wanted to give you just a brief introduction for those of you who may be new to what we're looking at. So those are the technologies that we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to close my end of the presentation and turn it over to Dr. Wilkinson, who maybe can share a little bit about his experiences with using some of these technologies. So I appreciate your attention, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Wilkinson.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Walsh. And thank you all for being here. I find this to be a very interesting topic, and I think the way I'll structure some of this, and I do invite questions and for my panelists to respond. I think what I might do is start by talking how I found my way into this as well. Talk a little bit about the research I've done and sort of where I'm at, and maybe even talk some of the challenges that I've experienced. Because I think on one hand, I really like the idea of the way in which technology can inform pretty much anything broadly, if I'm being perfectly honest. If I wasn't doing this here, I'd probably be doing it elsewhere at home. I mean, I like to play with technology, but I've always been interested in how technology can inform the training of clinicians, counseling students broadly. I've been interested in just sort of how technology can inform and in some instances make our lives easier. When I stumbled upon virtual reality, I think my initial way in was just through the technology, understanding through gaming and just being aware of what it was going on. I was also had my eye on a radar going back to augmented reality. I remember when Google Glass was really hitting the ground, and then I didn't really go anywhere. And really often thinking through how can these technologies inform counselor training. And for me, I think it's been said, one thing I've always been interested in, just as a counselor educator and as a researcher very broadly, is how do we teach students to do this very, in my opinion, odd job of counseling. It is a very unique profession in that it is in itself a unique immersive experience for the individual. And one thing I was finding when I started doing and getting into counselor education initially was I was very intrigued by, going back to the cognitive development, how our thinking changes about another individual and what does it mean to be mentally ill or better or normal, and all these interesting buzzwords that come out. And I was very curious sort of how we teach students to do that. And I love to play this game with my students. It's called What Happens to You When You Tell People What You Do. I'm sure all of you on here have stories of, oh, what do you do professionally? And there are times when I'm honest, and there are times I want to lie a little bit, because you'll get all the reactions of, oh, that's interesting, or I'm done talking to you. Or one of my favorite is this belief that I can somehow read minds as a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist or whatever word they want to use. And I find that because I find a lot of people coming into the profession and in popular culture don't fully understand what it means to be a good clinician. And I am a very humanistic in my mindset, my philosophy, my counseling theory. And so I always think a lot about the role of the counselor. And I always find that what's interesting about this profession, it is not merely an intellectual endeavor. It is a very experiential one. And I teach our practicum course a lot, which is when students get into their field experience for the very first time. And one thing I've seen just over and over and over again throughout the years is that initially the strongest reaction my students have is not, oh, I don't intellectually know what's happening, right? A lot of my students can see a clustering of symptoms and say, that kind of looks like this diagnosis. The conversations we're having are, this makes me feel a certain way. I've had students literally crying in class because they're so overwhelmed. You know, if you think about the issue of dealing with a child sexual abuse situation and trauma. And what that's led me to think through is I do think the way our training's set up is sometimes a little bit unfair, because we back end a lot of that experience. You're not getting in the hot seat, so to speak, until you're doing practicum internship, which in most programs is at the end of the program. And at that point, a lot of students are thinking about graduation. And so it's a very hard discipline to get a lot of exposure to really sort of sort through what's happening. So for me, that's kind of how I ended up doing and getting and thinking about where VR can come into play. And so, we just showed this. So through like an Oculus headset, one thing, the way I was looking at VR, because I know it's used also in a lot of clinical context, immersive, there's a lot of VR research related to the treatment of phobias through exposure in a controlled environment. And so in some ways, building off of that, I was very interested in thinking about how can we use virtual reality to get a more immersed experience for our students earlier in the program to help with the inter and intrapersonal experience of who am I, what is it like? And so the idea initially was I wanted to create these virtual micro cases, and I'll share my screen just as an example of one of the ones we have in Mindscape Commons is just this idea of how can I create this more realistic experience? And so the idea being, wanting to get this first person perspective going on for students. And so some of the challenge I faced is initially there's nothing